not only do their results of oppressive foreign policy come back to the US, the resistance manual has also come back.
So there's this concept called the imperial boomerang. It's the idea that colonial states develop techniques to subjugate the populations they colonize, and then import those techniques later to use on their own citizens. And this is kind of what we've been seeing in the protests in Los Angeles recently.
We are watching for more National Guard as well as Marines to move into the city.
Police in riot gear, some on horseback, charged at demonstrators.
New video shows when officers shoot a woman with a rubber bullet at close range.
Counterinsurgency theories that were developed outside of the US during the last 50, 60 years are now being employed by the Trump administration on the domestic population.
That's Joshua Collins, a journalist who's been covering protests in the US and in Latin America for almost a decade.
What I think is also interesting about these protests in Los Angeles is that the community has seen these tactics before because a lot of them were developed in Latin America. People that identify as Latino or Hispanic make up 48% of the population of Los Angeles. This is a community that has been doing this for decades. It has a cultural history and a direct history of dealing with authoritarian tactics.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has repeatedly sent masked and plainclothes agents to snatch people from their homes, schools, and workplaces. They've even abducted legal asylum seekers from their court proceedings.
Now we're talking about like massive ICE deployments. We're talking about threatening to revoke people's student visas.
On June 8th, US President Donald Trump started deploying the US military to Los Angeles to suppress the protests after crowds had flooded the city, shutting down freeways and blockading officers.
People were trying to block ICE vans leaving detention centers or trying to prevent through direct intervention, the capture of their neighbors and their family members and members of the community. But I started noticing that a lot of the chants that some of these Latino protesters are using are either directly from protest movements in Latin America or translated versions. In Colombia, indigenous movements here have a very long history of blocking roads.
I want to specifically kind of draw your attention to something you write about, how protesters are staging marches and direct actions that feint, fade, and return again, spreading out security forces.
In Latin America, something that I see a lot is that instead of just one big march from point A to point B, they might split into 4 marches and go into different places and come around through other streets.
For the security services, they can't necessarily present their entire force in full force.
I think that a lot of these tactics come from Latin America, and they're being sort of reintroduced back into the US.